Hey YouTube, Lester Croner Strolling Bones here. I apologize for any volume issues with this video beforehand, but sleep seems to be eluding me again. I tend to do my best writing work in the early morning when people are still in their REM sleep, so this video is actually going to be relatively quiet, and I apologize for that. So to add flavor, I've added the Habs and Freddy to the picture here. This is actually intended as a response, an on-the-fly response to a great video that I watched here over the evening. I intermittently take breaks while researching and writing to listen to what you guys have to say. I find it quite inspiring. In fact, my lovely lady friend is sleeping soundly, so I need to be relatively quiet. Anyway, here we go. This is a response to Samwise 7 RPG. I really like the videos that guy comes up with. He's a pretty creative guy, very clear with his understanding of the games and role-playing in general. I really liked his video that he wrote about player skill versus GM skill. And I'm going to do one of my regular ramble on videos about this. I apologize for any monotone nature in my voice as well, but here goes. I have experienced very similar issues, Tim, in the recent past here. I finally was able to get myself into a group. I've talked about this quite thoroughly in the last several videos, but I've been getting to play fantasy roleplay, or Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition to be more specific, with a group of guys who have started they've started a podcast called the Reckless Dice Podcast, and it definitely is one of the better podcasts out there that touches on that specific setting and that specific mechanical role-playing experience. And basically, I came to a similar conclusion that you did about player skill versus GM skill, noticing that I suffer greatly from atrophying of player talent, I guess, over years of misuse or lack of use, constantly being the GM. Now I have relatively good GM skills, and the majority of games I've run have not necessarily ended. They've been really good. The people, for the most part, have enjoyed my games when I run them as a GM, because I'm very similar to you. I like to have the control, and I like to be the mediator of random events and things along those lines. I think several skills I've touched on already in another video, but I'll reiterate and go into more depth. I think that certain skills that are specific to the GM or narrator are things like pure improvisation, stagecraft skills, the ability to play a whole bunch of different roles. They also need to be able to see the setting and the world from a disjointed or almost a godlike view. They have to look down on the world and understand how to manipulate and bring to life all sorts of elements, be it the flora and fauna, be it any esoteric or magical backgrounds, any creatures, strategically and flavor-wise. They also need to be able to step into a myriad of different roles for NPCs, be it the warrior, the warden, the priest, the beggar, the leprous or cantankerous innkeeper. These different archetypes go on and on and on. One thing I like to do as a GM before I play games is to kind of get an idea before I run a game, is to get an idea for the general surrounding that I'm anticipating the players to spend the majority of the session in, and then I like to pull open a deck of tarot cards and shuffle through them and pick 3 take a look at that and construct a character, an NPC, around those archetypes that are built into the tarot. And I'll do that for, say, 10 different NPCs, shuffling the deck, drawing 3 cards each time, and building a very basic framework for 10 different NPCs. Now, these NPCs aren't named, but they can fall into any role, be it the blacksmith, be it the princess, be it the crazed zealot, like I said, be it the murderous maniac, or the best sports franchise. In the case of Warhammer, that would be Blood Bowl. But regardless of what the character is, I have several basic archetypes written up with a little bit of flavor given to them through just reading into the general archetypes built into the tarot deck. And I like to use that ability, or not that ability, I like to use that as a resource to try to add depth to NPCs. That's one thing I find that a GM really needs to have, is basic knowledge of hundreds of things. They need to be a jack of all trades, and they need to be able to run with any kind of wrench in their immediate plans. They need to be able to mold and shape the world and be reactive to the proactive approach of the players. I'm getting from the videos of yours that I've watched, that you have that ability quite succinctly. You got that in the bag. You're good at that, which is a bonus. But that can bleed over into player territory when you're playing. That can be a problem, I find, is when you approach the game from a game master's point of view, not only mechanically but also in a role-playing sense, and you start thinking of all the options and all the things that all of the different NPCs could be thinking or doing at this time. Then that kind of falls into metagame territory, where you start forming the ideas of what your character is going to do based on previous knowledge. Or you, Tim, may be a very clever puzzle solver. However, your character, let's say Regdar, the Norse barbarian, or Norse marauder, he may not necessarily be the cleverest of puzzle solvers. He may solve all of his problems with a sword or an axe, and therefore you can't play him in a clever way. And I know that can be hard. That's a skill that a good player possesses. That's a commodity, a player commodity, I find. I call them commodities because I come more so from a game master's perspective. So with that being said, you need to be careful about what abilities as a GM, or what skills as a GM, you allow to bleed over into you as a player. Skills that a player needs to possess are creativity, but more specialized creativity. They need to also have stagecraft, but once again, this is more specialized than that of a GM. Think of a GM as a jack of all trades, a storyteller, a picture painter, a knower of all esoteric knowledge, somebody immersed in the setting, able to tell a story clearly and concisely, and be able to add that depth of experience so that the players can use their more specialized abilities of stagecraft and character development within their specialized fields for their specific player type, their specific character. Now, one exercise I find that has been helping me lately, I've been creating a lot of characters for fantasy roleplay, just in my mind, and I'll look through the deck of career cards, pick a career, and then figure out a way to create a character around this, or build character archetypes using the tarot model to allow me to develop a base character type, and then add the careers and add the different talents and add the different actions and skill points to that specific career type, allowing me to think more broadly on from a character perspective. Try to get really into the character, as opposed to, as a GM, I just get basics down for NPCs, because it tends to be the case that the players won't necessarily push every NPC to its fullest potential. So only like a little seed needs to be placed. The simplest things, such as obvious markings on their body, stature, the way you posture yourself, the way you represent them vocally, or if the person is extremely tall, or the character or monster to stand up from the table, and to create these illusions. But you just need to have very basic knowledge of all whole myriad of different creatures and locations. Whereas a player, you need to be able to explore these specific character types in a deeper fashion. You as a GM, I guess a skill that is good for both to have is an ability to bring the overarching story back together if it ever goes off onto tangents. As a GM, you should be able to read into this and then rationally decide how your character would go about solving the problem. So let's say you, Tim, as a player, realize that your party has strayed from what you perceive to be the goal of the session, essentially the goal of the adventure, the current adventure being taken. However, maybe your character, let's go back to this Norse barbarian or Norse marauder, maybe he isn't that clever. Maybe he's not going to fix the problem or steer it back on the right track via social or intellectual skills. Maybe he's going to force the party through intimidation or bravery to move the story back into a more effective direct or more effectively into the direction that the game master and players are attempting to go via the adventure or with the adventure. Other things that I can think of really quickly off the top of my head here, as this video grows long and it's late into the night and it's probably going to have bad audio quality, which I again apologize for. But something else that bleeds over, I think an ability to really dig into the world on both levels is imperative for both of the parties involved, for the game master and for the player. So players need to be more specified into specific individuals within the setting, whereas the game master needs to have this skill of, like I said before, jack of all trades. You need to know basics on mining and basics on just resource production in general. All sorts of really basic things that don't seem very important necessarily from a player's perspective unless they are specifically find themselves in an instance where that information is pertinent. Whereas as a game master, it always pays to have that stuff up your dirty sleeve. You want to be able to have maybe a game. Let's say you have players who may have a gambling bent. Maybe they want to play a game or a drinking game or something along those lines. Always have something up your sleeve where you're ready to play that because you've thought into that. You've invested time in the setting to realize or to make it pliable and believable. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at here is that I agree with you. It's very difficult to juggle being a player and a game master at the same time, especially if you tend to lean towards one or the other. If you have more opportunity to be a player, it's going to be harder for you to make the transition over to game master or narrator and be able to present these things or present a believable world to the players. Whereas on the counterpoint, if you are more focused on being a game master, it may be difficult for you to step away from the control aspect, the creative aspect, and just the I guess that falls into control, but the knowledge of what's going to happen, being in control, being the spotlight always, even though the narrator's job is to create moments where the players can take the spotlight. Essentially, the game master is in the spotlight all the time. Hopefully this video helps a little bit. If it's confusing and you want to open up more discourse, I'd love to chat about it further. Thanks a lot, Tim. I really like your videos. I want to reiterate that. Let's keep it going and enjoy your gaming. Hopefully you get a chance to be both game master and player. Check out my videos about the Reckless Dice podcasts and things like that if you're interested in possibly becoming part of our remote play community, we're looking for game masters and players willing to explore this world and these tools we have at our disposal. Thanks a lot, Tim, and community. Keep gaming.